Hello, welcome to Daniel Vale's pay-per-view show. I'm going to talk about Starrcade 1983, A Flair for the Gold. Last week or the week before, I had spoken about the main event from this pay-per-view on Daniel Vale's views of wrestling. And this was a standard bearer pay-per-view for a lot of reasons. Like, for instance, to really make this pay-per-view, or to really make pay-per-view itself something to see in the future for wrestling fans. Every match outside of the first match, because the first match just looked like a regular tag team match. It didn't look like there was anything special to it. But aside from the NWA heavyweight title match between Harley Race and Ric Flair inside of a steel cage to make sure nobody could get in, you had some matches like Abdullah the Butcher against Carlos Colon, which had a blade job done in there. You had Bob Orton Jr. and Dick Slater go against Wahoo McDaniel and Jay Youngblood. You had Charlie Brown, which was you had Charlie Brown against the Great Kabuki for the TV title. Roddy Piper, the greatest villain of all time, or the greatest heel of all time, going against Greg Valentine in a dog collar match. I don't think it was for the U.S. title, but it was a match. It was a special attraction match. And then you had the tag titles were on the line. I think the Briscoe brothers were defending against Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat. I gotta go back for a second. I'm guessing Jay Youngblood had 2 matches in here. And for the tag team titles. And then the main event, of course, was the steel cage match, like I said before. So let's start this off. The Masked Assassins went against Bugsy McGraw and Rufus R. Jones, and the Masked Assassins tag team partners. No, they were tag team partners. Their manager was not Paul Jones, but Rufus R. Jones, I believe. No, Rufus R. Jones was their opponent. Paul Jones was their manager. I'm sorry, I was confused. Excuse me. Masked Assassins. They had been around longer than anybody really, I think, realizes, because I think they were together as a tag team in the 1960s, because as a kid, Jim Ross used to see them on Oklahoma TV. And I think I almost read in his book how his first experience of going to a live event, and I think they were in it. So the perfect thing about them was that their masks were exactly the same. You couldn't tell them apart. And their clothes were all together as to not show their shoulders, so you couldn't tell what they couldn't tell what their arms looked like, what their shoulders looked like, anything like that. They wore shirts and pants that were the same size and same color, and their boots were the same, so you literally could not tell them apart. So, as I recall, Muggsy McGraw was the legal man, and at the end of that match, they switched places, the Masked Assassins did, and rolled up Muggsy McGraw for the 3 count. And by the way, Rufus R. Jones, Muggsy McGraw's tag team partner, this shows how different things were in the, they didn't switch places. It was a legal tag was made, and Muggsy McGraw didn't see it, so they legally won the match. And going back to Rufus R. Jones for a second, shows the how different things not only were, but this was the greatest thing about territories, because they had their own territory in the NWA. The Crockett's did. The Crockett family had Mid-Atlantic. And Mid-Atlantic was a part of NWA and the Crockett promotion. Well, I think they had a regional heavyweight champion, and that was Rufus R. Jones. Today, you don't see any of that because there's no territories anymore. So that shows the credibility that territories had, was the ability to showcase the stars they had on a smaller stage. And I think that's what's great about MLW, Ring of Honor, Fusion. No, there's 2 Fusions. MLW Fusion is the name of their TV show. Fusion is the name of a company. And for people who may not like to have the WWE Network, but aren't on Twitter, so you may not know anybody who is subscribed to any other wrestling network, so to speak, Ring of Honor has Honor Club, and wrestling... I'm starting to forget the second W word for WWN. All I know is, I believe that the N stands for network, so they're just like Ring of Honor has Honor Club, they have Club WWN, and that's the name of their network. So if y'all are tired of the WWE Network because you might have watched every one of their old shows, so you don't see the point of subscribing to it anymore, then you could subscribe to WWN Club or Club WWN, or you also can subscribe to Ring of Honor's Honor Club. The greatest thing about Honor Club is you can not just can you watch their house shows or their live event shows on the club, which WWE might do that in the future. As a matter of fact, I believe it's not just a possibility, I believe that it's definite. Because later on this month, like maybe in a week from now or 2 weeks from now, they'll possibly be airing a live Starrcade special for their anniversary, for the anniversary of Starrcade. They'll probably be airing that live on the WWE Network. Now, if that goes according to plan, then that might cost you $5 more than the standard fee. But for me, because I don't mind watching the WWE, I stick with it. I would pay $6 more because that's something I've always wondered. Why don't they show live events on the network? So now that they see the value in it, I'm going to definitely upgrade the account in the future. I'm sorry, I just like to do that for my shows. So anyway, I did put in here I was going to have some announcements. My announcements are, because of NXT TakeOver tomorrow night and Survivor Series Sunday, I'm going to talk about Survivor Series on, like, say, next Wednesday, and I'm going to talk about the rest of my poll options. I'm going to choose the next one I'm going to choose out of the three, because none of them had votes on them. So I'm going to have to pick which one I really want to talk about. So I'm going to talk about the second option that I choose out of that topic. I'm going to talk about that next Sunday. I'm going to talk about Survivor Series for next Wednesday, and I'm going to pick one for the rest of the month. I'm going to talk about Survivor Series, and I'm going to do, like, my top 4 favorite Survivor Series pay-per-views, and I'm going to do that up until the second week of December, so that I could finish that series. And they're all going to be on the Sundays that don't have pay-per-views. Okay, thank you. No, I'm sorry. They're all going to be on Wednesdays. The rest of my pay-per-view options for this show right here, I'll do that on Sundays. I'll do that on Sundays that don't have pay-per-views. Alright, thank you. Now getting back to Starrcade 1983. Kevin Sullivan and Mark Lewin, I believe, is a 45-minute time limit, which is another thing that's missing from today, is time limits. And I miss time limits because it takes away the art of the business. It takes away the ability to create, to make you... It takes away the ability to get the fans so excited that they forget that the time limits, that there's a time limit going on, and then they get down to the 10-second mark, and then the match is over. I really think that takes away from everything. So that's why I miss time limits. Now let's see. Who's his tag team partner? I want to make sure I got the name right. Johnny Weaver is teaming with they're about to say his name, Scott McGee, I believe. I really believe Kevin Sullivan's tag team partner's name is Mark Lewin. And his tag team, and his manager is Gary Hart. They go. Their referee is Sonny Fargo, possibly the brother to Jackie Fargo. As I think this might have ended in a DQ because Sullivan and Mark Lewin, especially Kevin Sullivan, never could follow the rules. Or if he followed the rules, he didn't stay long following the rules. He was holding the legal man's arm out for Mark Lewin to come off the top rope with a knee against the shoulder. That might have ended the match. They might have not gotten disqualified. 1, 2, yeah. They legally won the match. What happened was, because their opponent's tag team partner didn't walk out the ring, they ended up assaulting him because he fought him first. And they ended up using a blade job or something. Now this was all to get the crowd. It's all to get the crowd in an uproar. And after going through that, they had a special interview with Harley Race, who was still in his suit. It was being conducted by Tony Schiavone, who at this point had just started, so he didn't. I'm not sure if he did. I think he might have just been doing the interviews that night. And you had Greg Valentine, who was dressed to wrestle because the match was coming up soon. Greg Valentine on the left of him, sitting down, was Gerald Briscoe, and then Tony Schiavone was sitting next to him, and then sitting next to Tony was Harley Race. So let me read what he was saying. Saying how many times Jack and Jerry Briscoe were champions, because Jack, who was Gerald, I think they were twin brothers. He was sitting in the chair next to, on the left side of Harley Race. I mean, they brought up Harley Race, he called him Mr. Race, and he said, I'm sure this is the last place you wanted to be on Thanksgiving Day, which is, of course, Greensboro, North Carolina. But you're here right now, and I'm sure the fans are interested in some of your thoughts. On any given day, the last place on earth that I would want to be would be Greensboro, North Carolina, facing the situation that I gotta face tonight. But I've been sitting around here talking with a few of my friends that are knowledgeable about Ric Flair. They know his shortcomings, they know they've been around him for a number of months now. Getting a little bit of insight on what has been happening to Ric Flair in the last few weeks. Please believe me tonight, Flair. I know what your shortcomings are. I know where you're hurt, and I'm going after every one of those spots. And that was all they needed to hear, so they went back to ringside for the next match. And I like that kind of interview because of course this was the days of kayfabe, so everybody thought it was real, so he had to sound as close to real as he could get. But that really takes form of. I know you'll say, how intelligent can that take? Well, when you look at real life, when you look at real fights like boxing and kickboxing, they always talk about the weaknesses of their opponents. So that's what we talk about with intelligence, to talk about that part of the business. The physicality of wrestling in those days was why people bought into it so much, was because they were very physical, especially Harley Race, because he could not only fight in the ring, he could fight in real life. So that's why. So it showed that he was not just very mean in his character and maybe even in real life, but he was also very smart in the way that he spoke. Because a lot of people just like to talk about kicking somebody's butt instead of talking in an intelligent way like he did. Like saying, I'm going to go after the weaknesses. No, a lot of people didn't care about the weakness. They just wanted to kick their opponent's butt, and so that was what made it different in this case. And the next match was Wahoo McDaniel and, I believe, like I said before, Jay Youngblood against Bob Orton Jr. and Dick Slater. I'm sorry, the next match was Abdullah the Butcher versus Carlos Colon. It was a 60-minute time limit match. Carlos Colon, being from a very violent place like Puerto Rico, was not afraid to get dirty and act like a villain in this match. The problem was, when the referee was knocked out, that made it too easy for Abdullah Butcher to get help, and I think that's exactly what happened. So he came in, Paul Jones came in with something and hit Carlos right across the forehead with it, knocked him out. Paul Jones hit it in his pocket, whatever he hit him with. Cover, 2, 3, won the match. Okay. This whole match is too violent. Even if I meant this to be a watch-through video, this match is too violent to even look at. This was worse than the steel cage match, in my estimation. Angelo Mosca earlier had gotten hurt for trying to help somebody. I think it might have been his son he was trying to help. So you could see he had some cuts in his left forearm, and he had a bandage covering him from bicep all the way past his elbow. And Tony's asking him how he feels. He's supposed to be a referee in the World Tag Team match, so he's asking him, title match, if he can. And he said even if he had one arm, he would referee that match. He said what he saw there tonight almost brought tears to his eyes. There's this young kid who was 21 years old, who was bleeding. And it reminded him of his son. And he was talking to Mark Lewin. He said, I felt the wrath of the spike. So they got his Latin blood in an uproar. So he was carrying that young boy away to the dressing room. He said there's no place in the NWA or professional wrestling for those acts. He's done a lot of nasty acts, but he's never been that malicious or a malicious man. He has humanity in his heart for youth, because that's what makes the professional wrestling go on and on. So he'll leave with those words: that blood is thicker than water, Lewin. He asked him about the World Championship match between Ric Flair and Harley Race. He said he had worked out with Ric Flair many times and never seen a man that's more ready than Ric Flair. And he has the attitude and aptitude to be heavyweight champion. He said how he knows how tough Harley Race is, but he also knows and thinks in his own heart that Ric Flair will prevail. So Barbara Clary was asking the fans, I believe this was the time when he asked them if what they saw so far was worth the drive from where they came from. And one of the ladies said, yes, ma'am, every minute of it. One lady loved Ric Flair, one lady loved Charlie Brown, which was a masked wrestler. And she, of course, asked her, who do you expect to win the big match? And Ric Flair's fan said Ric Flair. And the other lady said Ric Flair. She said how interesting it is to see the main event later on in the match. In the night, excuse me. Then he said, let's go to Tom Miller. Now we'll see for sure if it's Jay Youngblood or if it's somebody else that teams with Wally McDaniel. It's a 45-minute time limit. Of course, Oklahoma is where Chief Wally McDaniel is from. Mark Youngblood, Jay's brother. Jay Youngblood's brother, Mark, was the tag team partner. Looks so much alike, I thought it was Mark. I thought it was Jay. This is a drop kick, does Mark. Dick Slater comes in illegally, I think. Owen Jr. starts choking Mark, and they go for a double suplex. No, both put him up on the top turnbuckle. Right in from Bob Orton Jr. Then you're going for that famous superplex into a cover. 2, 3. Ends it. Ends the match for he and Dick Slater. So these are some great matches, and that always have been fascinated the most, I think. Because growing up was the first was the time that they started using top rope maneuvers. And I remember I used to hear my dad talk about how when he was growing up, there was no off the top rope maneuvers. And I remember, I forgot what year it was, but they kept that when Cowboy Bill Watts brought it back to WCW for Effect. That part was not really a bad move. The bad move was taking the mats off the floor, because things had changed so much the business had changed so much that by not having mats on the floor made it more difficult to have people break the rules outside of the ring, which was the point of having the mats. But what I don't think they understood that they needed to have rules, and that was the main part. The main point of that was having rules. And they had a 10 count rule. They had a 5 count rule. They needed another rule to help with that. And it seems to me that they forgot. No, they didn't forget. TBS people didn't know the business, so they thought whatever they came up with was a better idea than anything that wrestlers or former wrestlers could come up with. That's what happened. So anyway, I remember watching and thinking how fascinating the top rope suplex was. What Bob Orton Jr. did that was actually smart on his part was doing it from the middle rope. That way, it took the possibility of injuring himself away from the match, from what he was doing. And you can see just almost every time you see a superplex today, there's more risk of injury. That's why I say that was smart of him to go to the middle rope and do the top rope suplex, because it made it not only easier on himself but also his opponent too. I don't think your opponent gets as hurt when you do it when you jump from the middle rope. The night after that match was over, they went back to Tony Schiavone, talking to Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. Then they had that same lady interviewing Dusty Rhodes about probably about the main event. She said, "How do you feel?" He said, "It's a big thrill being such a great..." It said indistinct, so I'm going to have to play that. Hold on. They had some technical difficulties. I didn't put it on mute.
Explaining how he feels about being here tonight, and obviously he is here to challenge the winner of this World Heavyweight Championship match, Dusty Rhodes, 2 times World Heavyweight Champion, the American Greensboro Coliseum. No question about that.
One of you rate Flair for the.
Well, if you can read his lips, you can tell what he's
It's a
saying.
good. Go boogie back up to the button.
He's not having such a good time, Gordon. He said he's going to go back up and
Winner.
he's
Not only is the winner going to have the belt, but he's going to have to work a lot harder afterwards because he's got Dusty Rhodes to deal with.
The next match is TV title versus mask match. Charlie Brown. Everybody can tell it was Jimmy Valiant. But then the story kept on denying it. That's the point of this match. If he loses, he has to unmask. This mask did not do him any justice. They needed the old Mr. Wrestling 2 mask in order to fool people. Charlie Brown won the TV title. And I'm pressing play to see exactly how he did win. Elbow drop after Kabuki. I'm not sure what Kabuki was going for. Maybe he was going for a big boot, but because he missed Charlie and he had the turnbuckle. Took this turnbuckle foot off the turnbuckle. He fell down. Charlie Brown hit the elbow drop for the 3 count. New TV champion was crowned, and because of the earlier technical difficulties with Dusty Rhodes' interview, they redid that interview in another part of the arena. So I'm gonna take the audio. I'm gonna unmute it and play the audio for y'all to hear.
Everyone here is watching and waiting to see the outcome of the big race Flair match, but the man next to me wants to do more than watch. He wants to issue a challenge. Dusty?
You know, Bubba, we're here on the biggest event in the history of wrestling. Dusty Rhodes American Dream. Anywhere that there has been a big event in the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years, Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, 2 times World Heavyweight Champion, is here. They have asked me many questions tonight. I'm here celebrating this. I'm partying down, challenging the winner of this match to meet Dusty Rhodes so I can be 3rd times World Heavyweight Champion once again. But the thing that is really pressing is who will win this match. Harley Race, the folk hero, 7 times World Heavyweight Champion, a man known all over the world with stamina and just complete drive and guts right inside him to be 7 times World Heavyweight Champion. And the nature boy, Ric Flair, right here in his home place. You understand? All his home people around him. A flair for the goal. Starrcade 83. For me to pick a winner, either one, I can handle the situation for the 3rd time. I want to make that challenge right now, but I'm going to go right out on a limb. And I'm going to say just real easy that the folk hero, the legend, cannot be denied. And you know who the folk hero is. Harley Race. Starrcade 83, I'm coming for you when this one's over, Daddy. The man of steel, Dusty Rhodes. Power to this Starrcade 83 is fantastic, Barbara.
The man who wins is going to have to work for the belt, but he's going to have to work a lot harder to keep it. Now back to Tom.
And just one side note here, after playing the audio for that, Dusty Rhodes, about a year after he got into the wrestling business, said this on the American Dream Dusty Rhodes story. See this on the network or get it on DVD on Amazon, I'm sure. He said that being tag team partners with Dick Murdoch for about a year, and they were such a big draw that they actually made enough money to not only afford to sleep in a hotel, but they could afford a case of beer every night, and they were so much alike that it overwhelmed Dusty to the point that he had to leave that territory and go to Florida, which is actually where he's most known for, is being in Florida. And they made him NWA heavyweight champion the first time by beating Harley Race. So this is a very significant part of not just NWA and not just Starrcade, but it's a very significant part to the NWA because of the NWA title and Harley Race being the champion for 7 times at this point. So I just find those stories very interesting, so that's why I like to share them. Next match is a dog collar match between the U.S. Heavyweight Champion Greg Valentine and Roddy Piper. Yeah, they were still calling him Roddy Piper. And I was telling my mom last week, I think, because me and my uncle were watching Mid-Atlantic, and I couldn't help but laugh because, it's Roddy Piper. As great as he is as a villain, he's very funny to watch just cutting promos. And I told Mom that even at that time, you could already see that he was as good as he was in the WWF. He was good in the Mid-Atlantic because he really was. The only difference was the company. That's the only difference. To show why a lot of people to show why there's a lot of critics of wrestling. In this match, Greg Valentine came too close with the chain part of the dog collar, came too close to Roddy Piper's right ear, and Roddy Piper, until the day he died, could not hear in that ear. He would always have to say, "What did you say? I can't hear." And he said it was because of getting hit in the ear with that dog collar chain. So in my opinion, that's why I believe they stopped dog collar matches, because of that. When you look at the Russian chain match, the bull rope match, matches where you have to drag your opponent around and tap all 4 turnbuckles to win. When you look at those matches, well, you can get physical, of course, but you don't ever get too close to the ear. That's why I think they're not afraid to do those types of matches every now and then, because the only thing you can hurt is the skin on your face. The only thing you can do is bleed, but you don't lose hearing or anything. So that's why I think they're not afraid to use those types of gimmick matches every now and then, was because of the fact that there's not as much risk of injury. So he pulled Greg Valentine off the rope, started hitting him with the chain across his bicep, I believe. Then he wrapped the chain around his leg and pinned him for the 3 count. And one thing it did One thing this match did, and as far as serving its purpose, is wanting you to see them go against each other for the title in the future. Matter of fact, he made the comment, "Is this the best you can do?" So you could tell they were going to most probably, you can tell they're most probably going to have at least one more run for the U.S. title before it was over. So I would have loved to have seen that myself, and I hope that they can release that in the Mid-Atlantic library of the network, because both of them are great wrestlers, and I always loved the U.S. title. And I just thought of this. They might have that possible title match between them on the U.S. Heavyweight title DVD that I have somewhere right there. Okay, it's close to the end of the tag team title match. Gerald Briscoe out of the Briscoe Brothers is the legal man. Ricky Steamboat gave him a body slam. Picks up Youngblood, drops him down for a splash. 2, 3, and they win the titles. They go to Bob Caudle, I believe. Yeah, that's his name, all right. Talks about they're just a few minutes away from the heavyweight title match. They're talking about intermission. I have to bring that back so I can know for sure what he said. During this intermission, we are thinking about what's going to be upcoming. Of course, the Brotherweight Championship match, Ric Flair and Harley Race, as we say now, just minutes away. They said, "We've already seen our new World Tag Team Champions. Right now, let's go to the dressing room and Tony." Here's Ric Flair just putting on his robe now, about to tie it. And here, let's see what he says.
Time is almost his. We're just moments away from a Flair for the Gold World Heavyweight Championship match between this man, Ric Flair, and Harley Race. It is also a very happy dressing room at this time, fans, as we are here with the new NWA TV champion, Charlie Brown from out of town.
Feel good, Rocky McGill. I love it, Daddy. We're going to do it. First of all, I want to tell all my people, all my brothers and sisters, I did it for you. This belt goes back to the people. Secondly, I did it for Jimmy the Boogeyman Valiant. And third, for Charlie Brown of out of town. We did it. Starrcade.
Charlie Brown from out of town, certainly a very happy man, and this man's a very happy man, but he's also a man that's very, very cut and very bruised this time, Roddy.
Come here. That's all the time. Is that the best you can do, huh? You say your strategy was to take away all my hearing. You see what you forgot is you got one more year to go. I beat you fast, Chris. Starrcade 1983. The next thing, Valentine, that United States heavyweight title, brother, that's mine.
Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper. right now, the new World's Tag Team Champions, Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat, just concluded, and what a match, gentlemen.
I'll tell you what, the first time was one of the greatest feelings in the world, but number 5, unprecedented number 5, that's why we beat the World Tag Team Champions, not for the first 4, but for the 5th time. That's right, it goes down in the world record books. Youngblood and Steamboat, number 1, again, on the top of the charts all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't care who it is, even if it is the Briscoes again, we're no closet champions, and we proved it to everybody at Starrcade '83, and we'll prove it next year or the year after, wherever it takes. Youngblood and Steamboat are the new World Tag Team Champions.
You know something, Tony? What I think makes a good wrestler, a good tag team combination, is being able to adapt to different styles of wrestling that's all around the world. You go to Japan, you go to Europe, and you have to deal with all these different types of styles of wrestlers. We've won against Paul Jones and Rashke, the Briscoe brothers, Don Canoodle, Sergeant Slaughter. All different types of combinations have gone against Youngblood and Steamboat. We may not be the biggest wrestlers going around the world, but we can adapt. We're in the best shape of our lives, and we know what it takes to be a good wrestling tag team combination and come home with the gold. Thank you.
5 times now, fans. 5 times. World's Tag Team Champions. We're in the dressing room, and we'll go right now to Bob and Gordon.
All right, and Gordon, I tell you, you can feel the tension. It's beginning to build now with this championship match coming up in just a few minutes.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been building all night long, no question about that. And I can't help but really marvel at the fact that Steamboat and Youngblood really took a page out of the chapter of the lives of Jack and Jerry Briscoe, turned it on them, and did it so successfully, and certainly a well-deserved victory. And I'm very, very pleased to see these two as the World Tag Team Champions. But of course, as you said, the big thing that we're looking for now, the one match that everybody has been eyeing, is the 7 times World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race going up against 2 times World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair. The popular consensus of opinion, if you go by the fans' approval, it seems to be weighted heavily in favor of Ric Flair.
That's right. Talking about the new World Tag Team Champions, I couldn't help but be impressed when they were talking just a few minutes ago that they weren't going to be closet champions, that they were going to defend those belts this year, next year, and whenever. They were going to put them up against everybody.
Yeah, I don't think that Jim Crockett is going to have any problems of having to buy contracts and buy situations, because these 2 young fellas are great, great athletes, and they do have that open attitude about, hey, let anybody come after us. Of course, we got to remember, too, the Briscoes, I'm sure, I didn't look at their contract, but I'm sure they must have a rematch clause, so they've got that problem to hurdle yet.
No doubt about that one. And 2, I couldn't help but be impressed by Roddy Piper. And he says, Greg Valentine says, hey, you may have got me in this year, but you forgot one thing, the other one. What about the other one? I've still got it.
And the other thing they didn't get with Roddy Piper, and I don't think anybody ever will, is right here, the heart. He's got great fighting heart.
It took a tremendous amount of that to come back, and Roddy Piper did it. So far,
Starrcade.
Starrcade 83, what can you say
I
about
was just telling my uncle what this show is.
Fabulous, Gordon. That's the only word I can think of.
Hey, I'll tell you what, it is a flair for the gold. There's no question about it. And boy, that's the one we're waiting for. Ric Flair, Harley Race, the World Heavyweight Championship coming up. And that's something that, well, I just hope that nobody's missing it.
And fans, it's only minutes away before we see that match right here in this ring. Right now, we want to go down to Barbara Clary at ringside. Well, they're not quite ready for her. I see she's not down at ringside, Gordon, so we won't go down to...
All right. Purpose. I know that listening to this show is about listening to my views. Because that's what a podcast is about. It's about people talking. I just thought it'd be fun to listen to what the people are saying instead of me reading it. And sometimes the closed captioning does not pick up the right words, so that's why I decided to play it. What I can say is that I think that before Ric Flair came down to ringside, before Harley Race came down to ringside, I think they interviewed Ric Flair one more time. So, really, it's really interesting to see this again because of all the things I don't remember. Okay, let me press play to see if there's anything else that's important for y'all to hear in the back.
Make doubly sure that there is no outside interference of any kind. It's also to make sure that nobody can leave that prescribed ring area. In other words, there is going to be a clear-cut decision as to who wins the match.
And fans, we're about ready with the action. Let's go now to Tom Miller for the introduction for the national anthem.
Okay, so the next thing is they're going to have the national anthem
Ladies and
played,
gentlemen,
as they said.
we ask that you now stand for our national anthem as performed by Nashville recording artist and North Carolina native James Tiny Weeks. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight at the ramparts we won were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare of bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Okay, so they did all the interviews all right. Okay, good. Ric Flair actually, in all the years I had seen him wrestle growing up, even as a teenager, I didn't even know he ever even won with a maneuver like this. He jumped off the top rope with a crossbody, never even knew how to do that, or never even knew he ever connected with it. That's how he won the heavyweight title after, I think, 45 minutes of a 60-minute time limit match. And I had spoken about this match from the Ric Flair Collection DVD on Daniel Vaillan's Views of Wrestling last week, and I would encourage anybody that listens to this to listen to that video, because I not only spoke about the match itself, but I spoke about the entire chapter, and I pressed play on the DVD for everybody to hear what Ric Flair said about the NWA title and winning it the first time, or the second time. Actually, it was the second time at this time. And I want to just let y'all know, excuse me, the next show I'm going to talk about. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please excuse me. I know that there were at least two Starrcades before WrestleMania 1. But I just wanted to talk about the first of those pay-per-views. First ones. So, because nobody voted on any of the other three options, I'm gonna do this chronologically, according to what I put in the poll. Next Sunday, I will talk about the first ever WrestleMania, and but I will come back on this show and talk about Survivor Series from this Sunday. And because of how long pay-per-views are, I'm going to use a different format for the pay-per-view show than for the wrestling show. Than for the Views of Wrestling show. Thank y'all. And goodbye.